Hello guys, good morning. My name is Ispedito Arjibal and this time we're going to acquire a new knowledge which is based on our new lesson. So are you all ready? Very good. Now to start our lesson, we are going to begin with the motivation. Now for our motivation, let's do have the activity called Everybody Sing. Have you heard it somewhere? Yes, very good. It is aired on the ABS-CBN during Sunday and Saturday in the evening, which is hosted by, yes, precisely, Vice Ganda. And because of that, we're going to perform what the other contestants did. And to begin with, let's have our direction. Now, the teacher will divide the class into 3 groups, and after that, I will instruct the students about the activity. So since you already have your groups before our class begins, now let's proceed to the mechanics of this activity. Right, for the mechanics, I will play a song with the lyrics. I am going to ask each of you to supply the missing lyrics of each song. The students are given 5 seconds to identify the missing lyrics, which is hidden in this sticker. Right, and after the given 5 seconds, I am going to count for another 3 seconds to allow you to give the answer. But before you are going to give your answer, first you are going to have your group signal. Now for the group 1, we are going to perform the sounds of the cow. How is it like? It's very good. It sounds like moo. While the group 2 will perform the sound of the rooster. How it sounds like? Yes, very good. Tik tilao. And for the group 3, yes, very good. The sounds of the dog. Group 3, you are going to perform the sounds of the dog. So how does the dog barks? Yes, very good. It's arf, arf. Then after that, you can use your microphone or turn on your microphone upon giving your answer. Yes, very good. Now take note that the first member of the group who can answer correctly will receive a point, while the group who got the wrong answer lost their chance to answer and will have to wait for the next round, while the remaining group will have the chance to answer in a count of 3 seconds. Now, the group who got the highest score will be hailed as the winner of these activities. Are you all ready? Yes, very good. Right, for the first song that we have, complete the song titled When I Look at You by Miley Cyrus.
Everybody needs inspiration. Everybody needs a song. Beautiful.
Your 5 seconds to discuss with your group mates regarding to your answer starts now in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Time's up. Your 3 seconds to answer begins now in 3, 2, 1, 0. Yes, group 3, your answer is yes, very good, Melody. Now everybody sing!
Everybody needs inspiration. Everybody needs a song. A beautiful melody. When the nights are low.
Right, for the second song, it is entitled Irreplaceable by Beyonce. Now complete the lyrics.
What did you think? I was putting you out for? Because you wasn't true. Rolling her around in the car that I bought you. Baby, drop them.
Your 5 seconds to discuss with your group mates regarding to your answer starts now in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Your 3 seconds to answer starts now in 3, 2, 1, 0. Yes, chicken. What is your answer? Yes, very good. Case. Now, everybody sing.
What did you think? I was putting you out for? Because you wasn't true. Rolling her around in the car that I bought you. Baby, drop them keys. Hurry up before your taxi leaves. And
Complete the song lyrics entitled Rolling in the Deep by Adele.
There's a fire starting in my heart, reaching a fever.
Your 5 seconds starts now in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Your 3 seconds starts now in 3, 2, 1, 0. Time's up. Alright, since none of you have pressed the button to turn on your speaker, all of you lost your chance to answer. Now let's answer it together. So the correct answer is, yes, very good, peach. Now everybody sing!
There's a fire starting in my heart, reaching a fever pitch, and it's bringing me out the dark.
Complete the song lyrics entitled Levitating by Dua Lipa.
If you wanna run away with me, I know a galaxy and I could take you for a ride. I had a premonition that we fell into a...
Your 5 seconds to discuss with your group mates begins now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. 3 seconds and starts now. 3, 2, 1, 0. So the correct answer is, yes, very good, dog. Rhythm. Now everybody sing.
If you wanna run away with me, I know a galaxy and I could take you for a ride. I had a premonition that we fell into a rhythm where the music don't stop for life.
For the last song that we have, complete the song lyrics entitled Tempo by EXO.
I can't believe 기다렸던 이런 느낌 나만 듣고 싶은 그녀는 나의 멜로디 하루 종일 꺼내 너를 떠나지 않게 그냥 내 곁에 Don't mess up my tempo 들어봐 이건 충분히 I said don't mess up my tempo.
So your 5 seconds starts now in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Your 3 seconds to answer starts now. 3, 2, 1. Yes, roster. Yes, very good. The correct answer is, yes, the title itself, Tempo. Now everybody sing.
I can't believe 기다렸던 이런 느낌 나만 듣고 싶은 그녀는 나의 멜로디 하루 종일 꺼내 너를 떠나지 않게 그냥 내 곁에 Don't mess up my tempo 들어봐 이건 충분히 I said don't mess up my tempo 그녀의 맘을 훔칠 beat 어디에도 락을 리듬에 맞춰 1, 2, 3 Don't mess up my tempo 멈추지 않는 이 feeling
Alright, let's compute who got the highest score. And the winner is... Yes, let's give them 3 claps and you nailed it. You nailed it! Alright, prepare yourself for another set of activity. Now this time, I am going to play a song and I want you to sing with it. So are you all ready? Very good. And here it goes.
ABC Kids!
Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream.
Right, the song that I have played is one of my favorite songs. How about you? Do you have your favorite song? Can you tell me what is it? Ah, very good. Now, what is the message of your favorite song? Ah, that's nice to hear. What particular experience can you relate with the song? Very good. It brings you back on your past life. That's nice to hear too. Does this song or music promote relevance of music? Indeed. Right. Since we talk a lot on song and music, why don't we enhance our knowledge regarding to it? Are you all ready? So our topic for today is all about the elements of music. So tell me, does any one of you has the idea regarding to it? Very good. So for the first element that we have is tempo. So what is tempo? Can you read? Very good. So it regards to the speed of a given piece of music. So when we talk about speed, what comes in your mind? It talks about the movement. And how does the movement relate to the speed? Yes, very good. The slow and fast movement, just like the car, the motorcycle, even as we move. And to widen our idea regarding to it, here is the additional video.
Is it so important? How can I easily see what the tempo is in a piece of music? And finally, how do I know if the tempo changes? So firstly, what is tempo? Well, tempo is the speed of the beat or pulse of a piece of music. There are two things that I find students get confused about this. Some people say, oh, it's the number of beats in a bar. No, that's not correct. The number of beats in a bar is described by the time signature. The other thing that confuses people is some people think that it's the tempo changes as the rhythms get more busy or the rhythms get more complex. It's really important to think that tempo is just a description of the speed of the beat or pulse of a piece of music. Have a listen to these three very short pieces of music that I'll play. Each one of them has got exactly the same tempo, even though the complexity of the rhythms change. You can hear when you listen to that why people get confused, because they think, oh, the rhythm's getting busy. It sounds like it's getting faster, but it's not. The rhythms are just getting a little bit more complex. Okay, so keep focused in mind. What is tempo? Tempo is the speed of the beat or the pulse of a piece of music. So why is tempo so important? Well, tempo is really important because it has a massive impact on the feel or style of a piece of music. If you listen to a piece of disco music, it's highly likely that it's going to have a fast tempo. Whereas if you're listening to a romantic ballad, that's much more likely to have quite a slow tempo. The choice of speed, the choice of tempo, has a big impact on the feel or style of the piece of music. So how do I know what the tempo of a piece is when I'm reading music? Well, there's two things that you need to look for. Firstly is a tempo marking. Now, tempo markings are mostly Italian words, although sometimes you'll see them in English or even in other languages as well. And they are a word written usually at the beginning of the piece of music, just above the stave. And here are some typical words you might come across. Adagio, meaning slow. Andante, meaning walking pace. Moderato, quite quickly. Allegro, fast. And presto, very fast. There are other words that you come across, but those 5 words are very common. So you might see a tempo marking at the start of the piece. The other thing to look for is something called a metronome marking. Now, these are being increasingly used in contemporary sheet music, and this shows the beats per minute, or the BPM. So you'll quite often see something like this, and there we've got a quarter note or a crotchet equals 120. And what that means is it's saying, look, the speed or tempo of this piece needs to be that you have 120 quarter notes or crotchets in every minute, and that's the speed that we go for. So 2 things to look for, tempo markings and metronome markings. So how do I know if the tempo changes as I'm going through a piece of music? Well, 2 other things to look for again. Firstly, if there's a sudden change in tempo, so the composer wants to change speed immediately, then you'll see simply a new tempo or a new metronome marking. Have a look at this piece of music here. You can see the first 4 bars, that top line, there's that marking adagio, meaning slow. So those 4 bars need to be played slowly. The next line, you've got allegro. Okay, so the composer's saying, actually, I want these next 4 bars to be played allegro, to be played fast. And so the tempo would change straight away. The second thing to look for is if there's a gradual change in the tempo, because the composer may say, well, I don't want to change tempo suddenly, I want to gradually change the speed. In that case, there's a few more Italian words to look out for. Firstly, if they wanted to speed up, then you've got this accelerando, and that's abbreviated like you can see there. If they want to slow it down, you've got rallentando or ritardando. And quite often, again, that you'll see that abbreviated. Once it's sped up, once it's slowed down, if the composer wants you to return to the tempo as it was before, they'll write a tempo. And that will be saying, look, I want you to go back to the original tempo. So let's have a look at this example of a gradual change in tempo. Can you see the start of the piece of music is walking pace, andante, and then just towards the end of that top line, that last bar, they've put rall, which is short for rallentando, which means slow down. So they want you to play that last bar, just slowing down a little bit, just to gives a bit more expression to the music. Then on that bottom line, you've got a tempo again. It means go back to the original tempo, go back to andante, and play that next line andante again. Have a listen to that example played here. Can you hear from that example how there's just a gentle slowing down of it towards the end of the first line, and then we're back to that walking pace tempo for the second line of music. So what did we learn from this? We learned what is tempo and why is it so important. Remember, tempo simply describes the speed of the beat or the pulse of the music. How can I easily see what tempo is? Look out for tempo markings, look out for metronome markings. And how do I know if the tempo changes? Again, if it's going to change suddenly, look out for a new tempo, a new metronome marking or a new tempo marking, and if it's going to change.
So the next element that we have is the pitch. So what is pitch? Pitch refers to the perceptual property that allows the ordering of sound on a frequency-related scale, either relative lowness or highness.
This topic is going to be on pitch. So in a nutshell, pitch is how high or how low a specific note sounds to the human ear. Pitch is the frequency of vibrations as they go through a sound wave. So if the vibrations are faster, you're going to get a higher pitch. It's going to sound higher to your ear. If you have vibrations that are slower, it's going to sound lower to your ear. So we can take those vibrations and measure them exactly to how many times they go back and forth, and then we can create a definite pitch. So in music, there's actually 12 definite pitches, and 7 of them are named after letters of the alphabet. So you have A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. After G, it starts over again with A, but if you listen as I play this A, it sounds much higher than the A that I played at the beginning. And the reason why is the first A I played had a definite amount of vibrations, and then we doubled that amount of vibrations, and we get the higher pitched A. So it keeps the same pitch, but we just doubled the frequency of the vibrations, and we get a higher pitch. If we go backwards and work the other way, and we divide the amount of vibrations by 2, so here's the first A, the second A will sound lower because we've divided the vibrations by 2. So in a nutshell, pitch is how high or how low a specific sound is to the human ear. And you can take these pitches and put them together in all different types of ways to make different melodies and use them in your songs in a variety of ways. And the next
For the third element that we have is rhythm. So what is rhythm? So this comes from the Greek word rhythmos, which means any regular recurring motion. It is the pattern of a sound in time and beats in music.
The first topic we're going to talk about today are beats. How do I define a beat? Well, a beat, I would say, is a regular interval of rhythm or a regular interval of any kind of sound. So if you hear a song, you know, like jingle bells, so I know I'm not the best singer, but when I clap along to it, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are what we call the beats of the song. They're in regular intervals, right? So it's not like, which would be irregular. They're very steady, right? So those are the beats to the song. So those are very important in understanding the rest of it. But let me draw out some beats for you and show you what they look like. So here we have 4 regular beats, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's it. That's all a beat is. Okay, now we're going to talk about tempo. Tempo is how fast you count the beats, right? So you can actually have 4 beats and count them slow, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. They were still at regular intervals, so they're still beats, but they're just counted slower. So that's what people mean when they say tempo. So what is the tempo they usually say of the song or things like that? So a tempo just tells you how fast you play. A fast tempo, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, is counted and played very quickly. A slow tempo, 1, 2, 3, 4, is played slow. And tempo is usually expressed as a number. It'll say like quarter note equals 120 in the beginning of the song, or they'll use it as like an Italian word. So if it says adagio, that means you're going to be playing with a slow tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's all there is to tempo. Let's move on to the next topic. Now we're going to talk about note durations. A note duration, very simply, is how long you're going to be playing the note for. So here I have 4 quarter notes written out. So things like quarter notes, half notes, whole notes, dotted half notes, eighth notes, these are all what we call note durations, and they tell you how long to play the notes. So let me give you a few examples of these. So here I have 2 half notes written out. How many beats does a half note get? Well, it gets 2 beats, right? Assuming that you know all of your note durations, you know quarter note gets 1 beat, half note gets 2, dotted half gets 3, whole note gets 4. So here we have 2 half beats. We still have, or 2 half notes rather, we still have 4 beats in the measure, right? So you have 2 beats there, you know, and 2 more beats there, beats 3 and 4. We'll talk more about how to count these in a minute when we talk about time signatures. But right here we have 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm still counting to 4 in this measure, we call it, and we're just playing the notes a little bit longer. So those are called the note durations. They are the duration in which you hit the notes. Now we're going to talk about measures. So if you notice that music is broken up by these vertical lines, right? Right there, there's one. There's another one. Let's find one more. So there's a third one, right? And those are called the measure lines. But they aren't really the measures themselves. They just kind of tell us where the measures take place. The measures themselves are the distance between, you know, each of these boxes. So measure 1 is right here. Measure 2 is right there. Let me actually scroll that down for us. So you have measure 1 in that box, measure 2 right there. So what are measures for? Well, measures are really so we can break up the music and read it a little bit easier. It just helps really organize the music into little units, right? And they are based on the thing we're going to talk about in a minute here called the time signature, which I'll tell you what that means in a second. But basically, we're fitting so many beats into each of these boxes, and it just really makes it a lot easier to follow the song. So if you're playing in a band and the instructor says, or the director says, play starting from measure 10, you'll know where that is. And usually there's what we call measure numbers at the top of the page, not at the top of the page, but like right above where the measure is, to tell you what number measure you're currently on. So that's all there is for measures. Just know that they are these little boxes that really help break up the music into more digestible and easier to understand smaller units. Now we're going to talk about this thing called the time signature. So where's the time signature usually located? Well, it's usually located right at the beginning of the song. Let's pick a fancy color here. Here's red. And that is not the time signature. Here is the time signature right next to the clef. So and you say it by the first number first on the top, so 4, and then the bottom number 4. So that one is called 4/4 time signature. And what it tells you is the top number tells you how many beats in a measure, and the bottom number tells you which one gets one beat. So it ends in a 4, so what note gets one beat? What does that tell us? Well, think about it this way, right? So it's 4/4. Pretend for a minute like the top number is just a 1. And that just makes it easier. So just pretend the top number is a 1, and then write the bottom number as it is written there. So you have 1/4, right? Well, what is 1/4 commonly called? Well, a quarter, right? Like if you have quarter of a pie, there is a quarter. So that's telling us that the quarter note is going to get one beat. Now what happens if it says 3/4? Let's choose that. So now it's 3/4. Well, what's changed, right? Only the top number. So we're only changing how many beats we can fit in this measure. The bottom number 4 still remains the same. So a quarter note gets one beat. So the way I would think about this is that this is telling us that we have 3 quarter notes, or equivalent to, I mean they could be eighth notes or whatever, in each measure. So let me show you how to fill in just this measure as a quick example. So it's telling us, right, we can have equivalent to 3 quarter notes in that measure. That's if it cooperates with us. There we go, 3 quarter notes. You know, we're not going to talk about all the note durations today, but you could also fit, you know, a dotted half note, which in itself would equal 3. Now let me add a quarter note. That is incorrect. Now why is it? Well, it's because in this, it actually kind of made it glow red a little bit, or highlighted it red. And that's because we have too many beats in that measure. So this measure has too many beats in it. Now if we were in 4/4, that would be fine, since 4 beats would allow us to have 4 beats in that measure. Let's talk about one more time signature. So here we have 6/8. What's different about this time signature? Well, the top number is now a 6, right? And the bottom number is now an 8. So what it's telling us basically, remember that it's telling us that there are equivalent to 6 eighth notes in that measure. Now what note gets one beat now? Well, it's the bottom number 8, right? So remember, to figure this out, you just pretend like the top number is a 1, you write the bottom number as usual, and hey, what fraction is that? That's 1/8, where the eighth note gets one beat. So now I'm going to draw out a measure of 6/8. And these all need to be eighth notes. And there we go, they're 6/8. Commonly they kind of beam them across like that, but we have 6, let's count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 eighth notes in that measure. So let's move on to the final topic of today, which is defining exactly what rhythm is, kind of tying everything together here. So how would I define rhythm, right? Well, I would define rhythm as a combination of note durations and beats. It's really a recognizable pattern that you can find in a piece of music, which has to do with how long you're playing the notes, right? So if you're like, there's your rhythm there, bump, 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 bump. You can identify that as it appears in a song, so it's recognizable to you as a pattern. Or, you know, just simply having 4 quarter notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a rhythm too. It's a very simple rhythm, right? You're just playing the beats. So if you're just playing steady beats, that can be a rhythm. But just because you're playing a rhythm doesn't mean that all those notes are beats in themselves. They're all like grouped together into beats. But just be careful that there's that discrepancy there, that you can have beats, right? And you play them smoothly. And that can be a form of rhythm, but just because it's a rhythm doesn't mean that it's exactly a beat. So to conclude, just going over some of the terms we talked about today. So the beat is the regular interval of sound, right? Like that, or let me play on the piano. Beats are fit into these things we call measures, right? You have a measure here and a measure here. By the way, when you're counting beats in a measure, you're only counting one clef at a time. One of the mistakes a lot of people make is that they'll count both of them, but you're only counting one across because both clefs are actually being played simultaneously at the same time. So you're only going to be counting the beats on one clef. And then obviously the amount of beats up in the top clef should match the beats in the bottom clef. It doesn't have to have the same rhythm, but it does have to, like in 6/8 here, we have to have 6 beats up top and 6 beats below. We're not going to add those up to equal 12. So that's one thing I just wanted to mention. And then we also have our time signature, tells us how many of the beats can fit in each of these measures. So that's how that fits together. And then lastly, we have our rhythm, which a rhythm is just really a combination of note durations, which is another thing we talked about, how long to play the notes, that forms a recognizable pattern to us, and that is our rhythm that we have. So today's lesson was strictly just an introduction into rhythm.
Have that melody. So melody is from a Greek word meloidia, which means singing or chanting. So it refers to a tune of a song or piece of music.
Now that we've got to grips with some of the most fundamental elements of music, things like pitch, rhythm, beat, and meter, we can start to look at the really cool stuff. And one way we can put all of these things together, combining pitch, rhythm, beat, and meter, is into a thing called a melody. Now, I almost thought that I didn't really need to produce a video on melody because I'm almost certain you already know what one is. In its most simple terms, a melody happens when we take some pitches and organise them into some kind of rhythm. And most of the time that will take into account ideas about beat and meter that we've already talked about. Once we've put these pitches or these notes together into a melody, we get a kind of a string, if you like, and that string has a sort of identity, and the identity of the melody, it depends purely on which pitches we've used and which order or rhythm that we've used them in. And a lot of the time we recognise music based on these melodies. Right from the first moments that we're born, people start singing and playing melodies to us, and it becomes a really sort of central part of our understanding of the world. I mean, with our parents, we probably sang lots of nursery rhymes. And one thing that makes these nursery rhymes popular is that they have very, very clear melodies that are easy to remember. And so why is melody such an important part of music? Well, I think probably one of the main reasons is because it's the most recognisable part. I mean, we hear it, oftentimes it's the highest pitch thing, it's the thing that's brought to the front of the music so that we're really, our attention is really drawn to it. I think the other part is, and the reason why it's such a central part of all music around the world, it's very, very hard to find music from any country around the world where melody is not an important, if not the most important part, is that we ourselves are melody-based life forms, if you like. We have a voice inside of us, and the thing that our voice is perfect to do when we use it musically is to sing a melody. Yes, we can sing harmonies and we can work together as a group, but if we're on our own, all we can do is sing a melody. All we can do is take some pitches and organise them into a rhythm, and when we do that, we get a melody. And we're just so used to it. As I said, we're sung nursery rhymes, we're encouraged to sing at school, and so it's not surprising that we really lock on to a piece of music by its melody, and we're able to recognise a piece of music by its melody. So if you have any interest in writing music, you're pretty much going to have to learn how to write a good melody, because every single composer that I can think of, that I really think is a good composer, understands how writing a good melody is the central aspect of what music is all about, I suppose. Take any composer, really. Let's take Mozart. Here's one of his melodies. There's one of Mozart's melodies. We could take one of Bach's melodies, J.S. Bach. Really, really recognisable. Now, there's obviously more to this music than just the melody, but I think the melody almost sums up the whole emotion and the idea and the sort of the central identity of the piece, I think, is caught up completely in the melodies. Often when people are talking about music, they talk about the way it sort of conveys an emotion of some kind. They say this is joyous music or this is tragic music, and a huge amount of that emotional power is held within the melody. Take a listen to this one. It's going to be a very daft melody, but it's going to be kind of happy-go-lucky and relatively joyful. And it was some of the choices that I made in terms of, exactly back to these basic elements in terms of pitch and rhythm, that we ended up with a melody that had that particular character. And it was because I chose, for example, pitches from a major scale. We've talked about the major scale before, and I chose my group of pitches from, this time, C major as a scale. And also I used rhythm to give those pitches a kind of, happy-go-lucky, skip in your step kind of feel. And that was because I used some quite fast moving rhythms, and I didn't let any of the pitches hang around for too long. Now, equally, we can choose some different pitches and some different rhythms to create a completely different emotional feel to a melody. Say we were to choose a minor scale. Let's take A minor here, which already has a kind of darker quality to the pitches, and if we combine that with a more sort of solemn approach to rhythm, we can produce something that's perhaps a little bit darker and sadder in quality. Let's have a listen to that. And so we can add loads and loads of other things to our melodies, but ultimately the melody, I think, is the heart and the key of what gives music its emotional power, and the reason it's so exciting to us. We seem to be so in touch with melodies. Now, in addition to adding emotion, so one of the things that melody can do is set up some kind of emotion in our mind. Another thing it can do is actually have quite a concrete meaning. So it can have meaning to it as well. If I was to play you this melody, tell me what you think it means. National anthems are a really, really special type of melody. They represent a whole country, and we tend to have the same set of meanings for those melodies regardless of what country we come from. So even though I'm from England, I know that melody means the United States of America, and it doesn't really matter where in the world I come from. That melody has a particular meaning. There's one for each country. Here's the one for my country. So when most people hear that melody, they tend to think of Great Britain because that's our national anthem. However, there are lots more examples where a melody has a meaning in a kind of local sphere. Take a listen to this melody, for example. Now you might be thinking, well, that's Auld Lang Syne. That means it's New Year's Eve, and that means it's the start of a new year. Well, that might be true if you live in the west of the world, you live in Europe or America. But actually, when I lived in Japan for a little bit of time, I started to realise that for Japanese people, that melody meant something very, very different. It was the melody that was played in the train station just before the last train of the night goes away from Tokyo. And if you've ever been to Japan, you'll know that the trains are an absolutely central part of getting around Tokyo. And so if you miss your last train, you're in a huge amount of trouble. So if you turn up at the station and you hear Auld Lang Syne playing, you know it's time to run, and you will see other people running to get their last trains because if they miss that train, it means that either a very expensive long taxi ride home or sleeping in the station, neither of which are hugely to be advised. So anyone who wants to know how music works needs to know how melody works, and in fact they need to feel that they can compose melodies themselves. I'm going to stand on a pedestal and say everyone could compose their own melody, and I'm going to show you how in the next video.
Right, we have the harmony. So harmony is from the Greek word harmonia, meaning joint or agreement. So it refers to the verticalization of pitch. It is often thought as the part of combining pitches into chords. These chords are usually arranged into sentence-like pattern called chord progression.
As we've just seen, melody is a really important part of almost all music, and in fact, for a very long time, it was the only element of a lot of music that was being written, particularly in Europe. Gregorian chant is one of the earliest forms of music that we find in Europe, and it consists of very simple melodies that were sung in churches and cathedrals to recite religious texts and also mark out important dates in the religious calendar. And the melodies that were used for Gregorian chant were incredibly simple. It would sound something a little bit like this. And didn't really have a huge amount of rhythm involved either. They were mainly melodic forms of music. But over time, composers started to experiment with what they could do with melody, and also started to explore if they could extend what they were doing in music beyond the bounds of pure melody. And when they started doing this, they started adding other notes to the mixture as well as the notes that make up the melody. And when we do that, when we combine notes or pitches in music, we come up with something called harmony. And harmony is probably my favourite part of all of music theory, because it allows us to take something that's as simple as a melody and give it a huge amount of extra depth and colour just by adding some extra notes. Imagine I had 3 notes here: a C, an E, and a G. Now what I could do with these notes or pitches is turn them into some kind of melody. Now you'll notice that during the melody there was only one note playing at any one time. The notes never crossed over, and so we got this sort of horizontal line going forward in time where we arranged these different notes or pitches into a melody. Now imagine if we wanted to do something a little bit different. Imagine if we were to slightly change the way that we were organising these pitches, not in a line that's going horizontally across, but instead in a vertical line where all of the sounds come at the same time. I've taken my 3 pitches, C, E and G, and turned them into a stack. So we're not talking about melody anymore really, we're talking about something else, because they're not coming in a sequence, in a series that goes on in time. They're all coming at the same time, stacked on top of each other. Let's just have a listen to what that sounds like. Whenever we have 2 or more notes sounding at the same time, we call this a chord. And chords are an absolutely central part of all Western music, because it gives us so much more colour and depth and emotion that we can play with. Let's have a listen to that chord one more time. You'll hear that the notes of the chord, they don't sound separate like they were before, when we were playing them as a melody. Actually what they do is they seem to fuse together to become one thing. And this is a really important point about chords, is that we tend to see chords as a unit, even though they're made up of lots of different notes. Because they come at the same time, we see them as one unit. A chord can strictly be any time we play more than one note at once. So the easiest way to play a chord would be to take one note and add another note to it, like this. But most of the time we use something called a triad, which is where we have 3 different notes sounding at the same time, and this is what we've got here. That's what we've just been listening to. If we just take 2 notes and play them at the same time, we'll generally find that sounds a little bit bare and empty, although sometimes it's the effect that we're looking for in music. But it really seems to come alive with colour when we add this 3rd ingredient, the E, to the middle. Suddenly we have this interesting colour and quality that we haven't been able to achieve just using pitches on their own in melodies. Now, I'm sure you've been to a party where someone's been able to get out the guitar and play some songs, which makes them incredibly popular and all the girls think they're really cool. Unfortunately, I was never that person, which is strange, bearing in mind I'm actually quite good at music. But anyway, it turns out that these people are generally not musical geniuses. What they've probably worked out is if they know a few of these basic triads, they're able to harmonise or play along with pretty much any song there is, and it gives them a huge amount of freedom and flexibility. Now, just like scales, these triads come in a few different flavours, like major and minor. So let's go and have a look at a few of these right now, starting with the major triad.
We have the texture. So texture refers to how the harmonic materials are combined into a composition. It could be monophonic, or also called as a single melodic line, polyphonic, or also called as two or more melodic lines, and homophonic, that means the melody accompanied by chords.
The most basic texture is called monophonic.
Oh mama, I'm in fear for my life from the long arm of the law.
Monophonic texture has only one layer, a melody. With monophony, it doesn't matter how many instruments and/or voices are present as long as they are all singing or playing the same thing at the same time. It also doesn't matter if the voices or instruments are on the exact same frequency or if they are singing in octaves. An octave is the distance between two musical pitches that sound almost the same, but one is higher and one is lower. It also doesn't matter if drums are present or not. In most cases, drums, the rhythmic layer, are neither melody nor harmony, and therefore are generally not considered when determining texture type. Too much monophony can be boring, so most music has another kind of layer, harmony. When a melody is supported by a harmony, the texture is homophonic.
No one may ever know the feelings inside my mind, 'cause all of the lines I ever write are running out of time.
One layer grabs your attention, and the other layer is just hanging out in the background. Most popular music is homophonic. Notice how there was only one instrument in the previous example, a piano, but there were two different things happening on that instrument, a melody and a harmony. What if a piece of music has multiple independent layers happening at the same time, and you're not really sure which one is the melody? This is called polyphony. Polyphony can occur if you have two totally separate melodies occurring simultaneously. Polyphonic texture can also occur if you take the same melody but start it at staggered intervals. This is called a round. The last texture is called heterophony. Heterophony is relatively rare in Western music, but is very common in non-Western music. It occurs when there are two or more versions of the same melody happening at the same time. Usually, one of the melody lines has more notes than the other, a kind of musical decoration, and/or a slightly different rhythmic pattern. Songs will often use a variety of textures to keep the piece interesting. For instance, this song has monophony, homophony, and polyphony.
Oh, I swear, at this moment, you need everything. Sam, come on, baby. It's like that I really know how you feel. Now, in my sense,
The next is timbre. So timbre refers to the quality of the sound. When we talk about sound, it is the tone that distinguishes one voice or instrument from another.
Another word for timbre is tone. Timbre is the distinguishing characteristic that differentiates one sound from another, despite the fact that they might be playing the same frequency with the same amplitude. When we're describing a sound's timbre, we use words like sharp, round, reedy, brassy, or bright to describe them. Let's correlate timbre to flavor. Think of apples. They're a type of fruit that has a typical shape, color, and flavor, but inside the category of apples, there's a huge amount of variation. Some apples are very sweet, while others are more sour. Some are red, while others are green. They're all still apples, but each one with a distinct characteristic. Red Delicious is different from Macintosh, is different from Gala, is different from Honeycrisp. Even when describing one type, there might be variations from apple to apple. Same thing goes for sound sources. One category of timbre we use quite often is strings. Inside of the string family, we have violins, violas, cellos, and double basses. They have similar timbres and tones in some ways, but each one is distinct. When comparing two different violins, one might have a very bright sound while the other is more muted and dark. Even when playing one violin, we can produce different timbres by bowing a different way.
And the last but not the least element, we have the key. So aside from the key that we know as to unlock or lock the padlock or our house or door, the key of the music is known as tonality, a principle in music composition wherein at the end of the piece there is a feeling of completion by going back to the tonic.
I want you to think of a key of music as a menu in a restaurant. When you look at the menu, you discover there's a limited number of items you can choose from. Without a menu, a restaurant would be in trouble because there wouldn't be any boundaries as to what customers could order and what the expectations of the restaurant should be. So it would be total chaos without a menu. That's essentially what a key of music is. It's just a menu of notes. Specifically, it's a menu of 7 different notes to choose from when you're playing a song or piece of music. That's it. Just remember that a key of music is a menu of 7 different notes. Next, what does it mean to play in a key? Let's take the key of C. If I'm going to play in the key of C, that means that most of the notes, if not all of the notes that I'm going to be playing, are going to be these 7 different notes. So why did I say most of the notes? Well, just because I'm playing in a specific key doesn't mean I can't veer outside of the key temporarily and play a note or two that's not in that key. Now, when this happens, these notes are called accidentals. Now, that doesn't mean that they're an accident. That just means that the composer of that piece of music chose some notes when they were writing it that wasn't in the key. And just to ease your mind, it's very few notes that are accidentals. Most music doesn't have accidentals at all. They usually just stay in the key throughout the piece. So just remember, when you're in any specific key, the melody and the chords are going to be made up of those 7 different notes of whatever key you're in. All right, next, how is this so-called menu constructed? Are these just 7 different random notes? Of course not. Music is very logical and easy to understand. These 7 different notes are in a pattern. In other words, all major keys of music have the exact same pattern, and all minor keys have the same pattern. Now, we won't worry about minor keys for now because that's another tutorial. For now, let's concentrate on the pattern of a major key of music. Before I go any further, let me ask you if you've seen the tutorial on how to find a major chord. What I essentially demonstrated in that tutorial was how to use a tetrachord plus pattern to find a major chord. Without me saying it in the tutorial, the pattern actually shows the first 5 notes in any major key. It's right here if you want to see it. So let's move on by looking at the pattern. First, you need to understand the concept of whole steps and half steps. Yes, I covered those in that tutorial, but I'll briefly explain them here. A half step is when you move from one key to the very next key. It doesn't matter if it's black or white, it's the very next key. A whole step is when you move from one key to the next by skipping a key. Again, it doesn't matter if any of the keys involved are black or white, you're skipping one key. Now that we've covered that, here's the pattern of a major key. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step. Just remember this pattern and you'll be able to find the 7 different notes in all 12 major keys. It's very simple to understand. Now I can hear some of you saying, isn't what you just demonstrated a major scale? Shh. Scale is a bad word. Okay, it is actually a major scale, but I don't like to use the word scale because if you're a former traditional piano student, your teacher probably had you playing scales and doing exercises that you didn't understand because that's the way they were taught and bored you to tears, and just the word scale makes you nauseous. It suits the type of music instruction that I'm teaching to call it a key because that implicates it being a useful tool to play music rather than just another music theory lesson that complicates things. But in the end, it's your time and effort that you spend learning, so it's really up to you what you choose to call it and how you look at it. Well, that's all for now.
So those are the elements of music that we have. Any question? Nan? Alright, since you don't have a question, let me ask you something. So for you, what is the importance of elements of music in our daily lives? Especially on a song. Yes, outstanding. Right, let's do have a recap regarding to the elements of music. What are they? Yes, the first is harmony, key, melody, rhythm, tempo, texture, and timbre. Okay, so prepare yourself for the next activity. Right, and the activity goes like this. In the same group, listen to your song composition from the previous lesson. Examine and identify what are the elements of music it contains. I mean specifically. After that, choose a member who will discuss your answer at the front of a class for a maximum of 3 minutes. And here is your rubrics that you are going to follow for this activity. Any question? None? Right? Proceed to your activity now.